What are the needs of your business, and what are the types of personality traits or skill sets that would really be a benefit to you as you grow it?
You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 331. And today, a serial entrepreneur is going to help us understand the pros and cons of having business partners. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hey there, inspired entrepreneurs and business leaders. It's your host, Melanie Benson, authority amplifier and possibility igniter for expert-based entrepreneurs. And today we've got a guest joining us to talk about what she learned from co-founding several very successful companies with one person. The ins, the outs, the good, the bad, the things to watch out for. So if you've even considered partnering with somebody else to start a business, or even a lot of things that come up when you do joint ventures and other types of strategic partnerships, you're going to love today's episode. Today's episode reminded me so much of the value of relationship capital. We can go so much farther, so much faster when we align with other people who complement us, who can help us bring our vision to life. And I find that a lot of expert-based entrepreneurs are winging it and they are trying to get so much done on their own, and they're really missing the value of that collaborative power. And in my experience, when you have a lot of vision and a lot of creativity, you absolutely need people who can integrate your vision, who can help with getting things done, because you probably are more of an initiator. And I find that when it comes to growing the reach of your business, relationships are so key. I talk about this a lot in the collaboration side of things. And one way to really make sure that you have the collaboration power necessary to exponentially grow the reach of your work in the world is to make sure you know how collaboration fits in all 7 of the key factors of a highly paid authority business. So if you head right now to amplifywithmelanie.com, you can download a 7-step framework that I have used over and over and over again in my 2 decades plus of running a business. And this is the same framework that I teach my Ignite clients. And it's the same framework you can use right now on your own to make sure that you have all of the pieces in place to be paid 4 and 5, maybe even 6 figures for your work, tap into the collaboration potential, and really grow the reach of your work in the world. So again, go to amplifywithmelanie.com. You can download this framework for free right now, and I will help you learn what's been missing and how to put those puzzle pieces together for more growth faster. Now, let's get into today's episode. Welcome back, Amplifiers. Today, I'm speaking with Tanis Jorge, and she has this so unique perspective on co-founding companies. We're going to be talking about how to know if your business partner is your company's greatest asset or becoming a liability. Now, let me give you a little bit of juicy background on Tanis. Tanis is co-founder of a company called Trulio. And it's a she's a serial tech entrepreneur and a leading advisor on entrepreneurship and building successful co-founder partnerships. Over the course of her career in startups, spanning the last 20 years, Tanis has co-founded, scaled, and successfully exited multiple data-driven businesses with the same partner. I can't wait to hear about that. So today, Tanis is one of the go-to voices and experts in the co-founder relationship, author of the Co-Founders Handbook and founder of the Co-Founders Hub. And her work today focuses on how co-founders can function in an open, productive, and symbiotic way to ensure continued and long-term business success. Tanis, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Melanie. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm excited for this conversation because I've never had a co-founder. I have had business partners along the way, and it's a delicate relationship.
It is.
and it's kind of like a marriage in a lot of ways. So I'm excited to unpack this with you because I think I can just imagine what could happen to entrepreneurship, to marriage partners who are business partners, and
Mhm.
people who start these businesses together if they had the tools that you're able to provide. So
Yeah.
can't wait.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Me too. So I thought it might be fun if we start by just kind of painting a little bit of a picture of the background that you're coming from. You have built a $1 billion company
Yes.
with your co-founder, and you're still friends and you keep building businesses together. So let maybe back up a little bit and tell us, like, first of all, how'd you get started, and how have you been able to keep that connection thriving with your co-founder?
Yeah, awesome. Well, it's a great place to start, the origin story. So, I met my co-founder actually in high school. He and I had lockers beside each other for 5 years, from grade 8 to grade 12. And over that time, we forged a really, really incredible friendship. We were best friends, did school projects together, and we really built that friendship. Little did we know, I always say that we were actually building the foundation for our working relationship down the road. So, but we went to high school together. And then when we graduated, both of us decided to skip the college and university, and we dived right into business. And we started our very first company. And over the course of 10 years, we were able to successfully build and exit three companies over those 10 years. And, it was an incredible time. We, I don't think we ever really considered how we worked together, and that was what a really interesting thing to me when I wrote the book and was reflecting on my partnership. How did we make that work? But, there was a lot that we brought from our friendship in. And then we also really knew how we could complement each other. And that was like a key piece of it. And then after that was 10 years, I decided I was going to start a family. But Stephen was ready to move on. And so he went to Silicon Valley with an idea that we had, and we raised money down there. And that was truly you. And from there, the company grew over the course of 10 years to become the quote unquote unicorn that it was, or that it is. And yeah, it's been an incredible journey.
And what is Trulio? Just so we have context for the company you created.
Yeah, for sure. Trulia is an identity verification company. So
Mm.
we basically do identity validation. It really stems from the same industry that we were in our previous companies. It was just an extension of what we had done before.
Mm. Okay, my mind's going in so many different places. And so here's what's in my mind. We've seen so many movies or series, some of which are just been aired over the last years. I believe it was the Coworker company. They just did the series on Hulu about the founders of that being married couple.
Yes.
We've seen similar situations. I can't remember the name. It was like the Adam Project or something like that, where
Yeah.
the child, the teenage people who the man and the woman who were friends, they created this company, and then one of them betrays the other. Like, we see this in the
Totally.
media all the time, right? Where you have maybe defied the odds or set the standard, I don't know what, or,
Yeah.
landed on something. Like, what do you think? Like you said, really focusing on your synergies and how you complement each other, but I have a feeling something goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
Is the real foundation that we're looking for if we're going to align with a partner in this way.
Yeah. So one of the key things that I've managed to interview hundreds of founders, survey multiple founders in different ways. And I think what it all boils down to is a form of intentionality. You know, that person at the helm with you is somebody that is actually on your side. And I'm always trying to shift co-founders' mentality as they look at their partner and say, look, if you two are doing something together, you are going together in the same vision. And if you break that vision, you're actually going to be affecting your own personal growth and your own success. So I'm always telling everyone, be intentional about building that bond with that person with you and making sure that you're on the same path, that your vision is united, that your execution plan that you have for your company, you are on the same page. It's so vitally important. So intentionality is like a key focus. And the ones that do that well, they go on to succeed. But the partners that have like a set it and forget it mentality, unfortunately, everything leads to deterioration. And you really need to keep focused on it right from the beginning and move forward that way.
Yeah, I love your use of intentionality there because I think I don't know if you've seen this, but entrepreneurs as a rule tend to be very winging it, right? Like they're flying by the seat of their pants. They're just
Totally.
figuring everything out as they go. You know, they may have a vision, but the vision's constantly evolving, and there's tends to be a lot of erratic growth and messy growth.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're not immune to messes, but I know that as when there's business partners involved and there's two of you or more as partners, that messiness can sometimes be really hard for people. Like, what do you think is the secret sauce to overcoming those growth challenges and keeping that intentionality and that synergy in place that you've mentioned?
Yeah, sometimes it seems obvious, but when you're in the fires of entrepreneurship, sometimes you're not thinking about the obvious stuff. So,
Mhm.
of course, the first thing is communication. So, one of the things that Stephen and I did really well upon reflection was that we regularly sat down and we really mapped out our business going forward. And in doing that, we were able to catch where one another had different ideas of how we could move forward and we can work it out. It was like a whiteboarding session where we'd put all the possibilities then and decisions that we had to make, and we'd run it a bit like a choose your own adventure. Like, what if we went this direction? What would be the possible outcomes and decisions we'd have to make? And in that exercise, we really aligned our mission, our vision, our plan going forward. So that communication, I think, was the big key to how we were able to progress forward and build multiple companies together, because that process of communication was so key. And unfortunately, yeah, a lot of partners, they just they focus on their revenue growth or they focus on all these other key, but statistically 65% of businesses will fail because of issues between the founders. And when I heard that stat, that was like, wow, this is a big deal. And very, very few people are actually putting that focus on that one, what I call the Trojan horse, that could be already in their business that is actually potentially a major liability.
Okay, I want to unpack that a little bit more because when I was thinking about our conversation and I was preparing, I was thinking, I bet with all this experience you've had, you probably can help people spot signs
Mhm.
that there, as you referred to as a Trojan horse, but there's maybe some liabilities that are already embedded in the relationship or in the dynamics that they need to pay attention to because they may blow up later.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the first ones that I look for is sort of an off-jointed ego. Um, this can happen oftentimes with different roles. Um, but for some reason, there seems to be this uh, happening that happens between partners where one particular person, they don't want to be vulnerable. As entrepreneurs, we like to think we're great at everything. And if there isn't this ability to be vulnerable and authentic with their partner, what can happen is you get this excuses for why mistakes are made. You might get ignoring, not talking about things, sliding things under the rug. And then a lot of times people are not choosing their battles appropriately. They're fighting over the little stuff and they're not seeing things in the big picture. So I think that ego tends to be one of those red flags that unfortunately you can kind of see progressing. And then putting things under the rug that should be spoken about. And sometimes that comes from just like a lack of ability to have those difficult conversations and come out the other side with a solution. But often when I advise some founders, they're like, oh, yeah, we have this underlying issue that we just can't get past, kind of like in a marriage. We all have these underlying issues. And unfortunately, that starts to create mistrust or resentment or anger or frustration. And that really starts to break apart the partnership. So those are kind of some of the key points and factors that I notice that tend to eventually go down and deteriorate a partnership.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so dead on. And
Mhm.
I was getting really curious as you're talking. In the work I do, I look at values alignment in terms of fit for
Mhm.
people doing business together, and I'm wondering how important do you think it is for people to share their value systems, at least around business, to be successful in co-founding or business partnership?
So, Melanie, you literally just nailed the one major epiphany that I had that I never expected when I was interviewing co-founders, and that was the topic of values. There was so many times that I would speak to partners that had failed partnerships, and there was this underlying random. People would say it offhandedly, and they would say, we really actually just had different values. And it was interesting because oftentimes those values weren't necessarily what was happening in the business, but was happening in their personal lives. And I thought that was really, really fascinating that over and over again, when people spoke of a failed partnership, they would mention again, yeah, just sort of the way they treated other people or the way they handled their personal taxes, these little comments that one person said, we didn't align, to the point that now I say these questions are something that you have to talk to the other person about who you're going to partner with, finding out what are your values. What do you put weight in? What is important? What moves you? What pushes you on a daily basis? You know, asking kind of the tough questions, where do you stand on certain political fronts and different things? These matter ultimately in the partnership. So you totally nailed it. Yeah. Values
Yeah.
is a huge one.
Yeah, I think values, I think when we're hiring team, it also comes into play. It comes into play with, client alignment. And I can imagine in that co-founder, that symbiotic relationship that's emerging, it's like when values are not connected, that's going to see that distrust you mentioned. And it starts to put doubt in
Yeah.
people's minds and maybe on a very subliminal level.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's an extremely, extremely important. So much so that we actually created a product that we call Discovery Session at the Co-Founders Hub. And what it is a series of about 100 different questions. And a lot of them are the really, really, really tough questions that you need to ask before you join a partnership. And some of these questions really spark significant conversations, like something like, should we allow our spouses to work in the business or our children to work in the business? You'd be surprised how many times some people think, oh yeah, my wife can work in the business. And the other person's going, no, that's not what I want. So these are some very interesting conversations, and it's really, really important to communicate them.
Yeah, I think if you've ever watched an episode of The Prophet, having your family member work in your business isn't always the best decision.
It's not. It's book 2 that I didn't even really talk so much about families in it because that's a whole other business, a whole other topic. It's another book completely, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a tough
It's a
one.
unique thing. Yeah.
It is.
Okay, so let's flip this. We've talked about like maybe some signs that it's not a good fit or, things to look for. And I love that you have that discovery product because I think if we get better at asking the right questions before we commit to something that big, either A, you can avoid it altogether, or
Yeah.
B, maybe you can address it and come up with ground rules, so to speak. I'm sure you have a process for that.
Mhm.
But let's flip this to what are we looking for? Because I got to imagine, Tanis, not everybody's going to drop into their best friend from high school being their great business partner. And some people are finding this, they're seeking it out or they're meeting people along the way and they're evaluating this next step. What should somebody be looking for a healthy, vital, thriving partnership?
Yeah, for sure. So it was really interesting as I was talking to co-founders. I found that there was a lot of times what people did is they went to what I call the obvious list. And this was that, say, for example, someone had an idea for a software company, but they're not an engineer. So the first thing they think of, well, I got to get an engineer as my co-founder. Or someone's opening a restaurant and they have this idea for a concept that they think, I need a chef. These are the obvious skill sets that a lot of people just go straight forward for. But what I realized is there's actually a bunch of other factors that can really actually have a bigger impact in the positive or the negative, and or might be something that you want to look for. So I'll give you an example. Life stages. So oftentimes you might have somebody who's like maybe they're just out of university, still living with their parents. They have this brilliant idea, and they've got all the time in the world to build a software product. Say, one of the things they have to consider is, who am I going to bring on and what life stage are they at? Is that person able to commit 80 hours a week along with me? Or are they not going to be able to commit that, but they're able to bring an expertise that might be valuable? So to them, if they jump into this partnership and the person isn't giving 80 hours a week, they might go, this person's not putting in 100%, but really they have family obligations or they have other things that are kind of stopping them from being able to commit. And if they don't talk about that, then unfortunately that can become a point of resentment. So there are these really key factors. So to cover that, we have what's called the self-assessment. And really it is same sort of scenario, reflection questions that really helps people to dig deep into themselves and say, where am I excelling and where do I need assistance? So whether that's someone's detail-oriented and they need someone who's more high level and who can come in with more bigger vision, what is a personality style? Are you risk adverse and you need somebody who can kind of, push you forward, or vice versa? There is so many other factors. And as you reflect on who you are, what your needs, what your goals, what you bring to the table, you'll start to see this picture of what person really could be a benefit to your business. And it also is determined on what kind of business you're in. That's another key focus. It isn't just about the partner, but what does your business need in the leadership that's going to be at the helm?
Mhm. That's so good. Okay, so
Mhm.
now you got my brain going here, and I'm thinking about something you said earlier with ego and how important it was for you and your partner to find the complement to each other.
Mhm.
And this is one of the things I know has blown up many business partnerships, people that I've coached in my past, is they both like to do or grow to like to do the same things in the roles,
Yeah.
and their roles are no longer distinct. So now
Yes.
they're on top of each other. And so if we were to go to these discovery questions, what's a discovery question somebody could reflect on to really ascertain, are we really complementary or are we too similar and we're going to be on top of each other?
Yeah, for sure. So here's an interesting. I'm going to give you an example of two founders. One of the girls, she actually did our self-assessment, and she realized that she was very quick to make decisions. But what was interesting was that the business she was building, what was a key focus was time to market. And so this was a time where she realized, actually, I don't want someone to compliment me in this area. I don't want someone who's going to be like, no, let's look at all the details. Let's make sure we've, got all our ducks in the row. Let's be a little more thorough. She realized in that moment, I need someone who's also very quick, who's able to turn, who's able to grab opportunity when it comes in. And so that was a really important question. What are the needs of your business, and what are the types of personality traits or skill sets that would really be a benefit to you as you grow it? And maybe if you're like that, great, but maybe you need your partner to be like that as well. So that's just one example of a question.
I love that. And I love that you went from, hey, we don't always have to be perfectly complementary. Sometimes we need to share certain skill
Mhm.
sets or characteristics to really move this mountain called, launching this business. And I think that's a really excellent point is, are you looking for similarity or are you looking for complementary? And knowing that, I think, is really important. Again, it's just,
It's a really complex equation, and it isn't just so simple as like, oh, I need a person to do this. There are so many other factors, like, do I need this person to be able to add capital to our investment? Do I need them to be able to have a skill set in particular, or more, do I need them there to sort of support me if I'm sort of the going forward person, the front facing person? Do I need that person in the back? So there's, again, it's a really unique, customized equation that people have to figure out.
Yeah, it's not straightforward.
Mm-mm.
Nope. Okay, so I have one more question that was starting to emerge, and I want to come back to something we kind of touched on, but I want to dig a little deeper. Let's say there's a partnership and they've got a great business, but they're in conflict
Mhm.
and they're locking their horns and they're stuck.
Yeah.
Is that hey, we got to just, close the doors or, somebody buy each other out? Or is there, in your experience, a way to bring them back into some kind of harmony and thriving again?
Yeah. So the first thing that I would do if I was advising partners that are really at that standstill is first to just say, listen, first, make sure that you guys are realizing that your success helps yourselves. And again, sometimes it's you said this, you did that, and they forget that they're a team. So that's the first thing that I try and do, and try and change that perspective that the person is their enemy, and instead, look, this person wants the same outcome as you do. Together you are a better force. So is there a way that you can change that perspective and then move forward from there? So that's one of the first things that I often tell people to do. The other thing is not to be afraid to reach out to a mediator, to an advisor who has no vested interest, but they're able to come on as like a sounding board where you can say, listen, here's this situation that we're in. How would you handle it? I actually even heard a couple of founders who put the questions of execution out to their team. They didn't let them know that they were struggling or anything like that with this, but they said, hey, here's an opportunity we have at our on our plate. How would you move forward based on your expertise in the role that you have? And in so doing, they said, whatever the outcome comes, it's not going to be, well, you were right and I was wrong. We're just going to go forward with what's the best for the business. And that was a really, really great exercise for those founders.
This is such great advice, and
Mm.
I think again, like I'm imagining, like okay, you're going to business therapy in a way, right? It's like
Yeah.
or co-founder therapy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's literally like let's reunite over what our common goals and vision is. Like let's put the differences aside, and can we recalibrate back to our vision? And I think miracles can occur in that moment. So I heard you say, don't give up, just recalibrate.
That's right, exactly. And I tell founders actually from the minute you start your partnership, find an advisor. Find that person who's going to walk alongside you in your partnership, that's going to understand your business, who's going to understand how the individual co-founders work, what their style is, and let them walk along through with you. Meet with them periodically, once, twice a year, but just somebody so that if and when those situations arise, you have somebody who has like a background with you and can actually guide you and advise you in a much better way.
So, is that something that the Co-Founders Hub does for people? Is that one of your roles?
Yeah, well, the resources that we have are kind of meant to be that guide. Hopefully,
Okay.
the goal is that these tools that we have actually help mitigate and sort of help you dig your well before you're thirsty, right? Answer those questions that you need answered so that you don't have to deal with it when it's an emotional question that you have to have answered. Deal with that ahead of time. Same thing with your legal contracts. Make sure all of these things are shored up in a way that is very positive and done at a time when you're not actually handling a situation.
And you didn't say this outright, but I am reading between the lines with what you just said. Like, this is probably one of the most important things you do in those relationships is get legal agreements in
Mhm.
the inception stage, not in the melty, everything's falling apart stage, because everything's different in that stage than it is in the honeymoon. Like, oh, look, we're doing this amazing thing together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I have a few stories in the book actually of founders who decided to kind of wing it. They were really great friends or they had really strong relationship and they thought for sure a handshake's going to be good enough. But when you never know where your business is going to go, unfortunately, sometimes you just don't get the benefit of just having a handshake. You actually have to have some real plans in place. And yeah, it's really, really important.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm
Mm.
assuming that your book is going to be flying off the shelf because there are so many people who really, they do want to collaborate. They do want to co-create together like this, because there's so many powerful things that can happen when you're synergizing with some other human being. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to write a book about all of it.
Yeah. As I started to advise founders, I realized that a lot of them were what I called, quote, silently suffering. And as an entrepreneur, when you're in a business partnership, if that starts to go sideways, there's not a lot of people that you can turn to. Like, you can't turn to your investors because you're going to freak them out. You can't turn to your employees because it's just inappropriate, suppliers, vendors, any of these kind of people. And you can't even really turn to your family because there's this sort of element where you're like, well, I know you're going to be on my side and you're biased and you're not really truly going to be able to give me that honest advice because your family's not even in the trenches with you. So it's very silently suffering. And so I wanted to create a book that came from the perspective of co-founders. So these are the advice and the wisdom of people who have gone before, who have been in that position, and they understand the complexities and the emotional roller coaster that it all can be. And then they give that advice. And I really wanted that because I really have a passion for entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I really believe it's the backbone of our economy, of our society. I think it's such an important factor. And I really want to be able to undergird it and support it. And I realized that this is one major way that we can do it. And we're just not shining a large enough spotlight on how important it is that these people who are innovating and disrupting and completely changing the world for the better around us, that we have to help them have that strong partnership, or else, unfortunately, those businesses are at risk.
Yeah, well said. So let's talk about the book.
Okay.
It's a guidebook for co-founders.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've interviewed a lot of different people.
Yes.
And brought their stories to life in your book.
Yeah.
So something for every kind of founder or
Totally.
partner in there.
Yeah.
And where can they get the book?
Yeah, so for sure, the book starts with all the stages of a partnership. So whether you're looking for a co-founder or you're even deciding, should I get a co-founder? There's a chapter for that. Then there's the chapter of where to find them, what to look for, how to vet them once you have that candidate you think might be the best, how to do legal documents, then how to navigate the partnership, how to communicate properly, how to handle difficult conversations, what to do when you're struggling, all the way to how to exit a partnership. And then I finish with some incredible stories that really highlight that this relationship could potentially be one of the greatest ones you'll have in your lifetime. Very few opportunities do we have in life to really integrate somebody into our whole being and our whole selves. And this is one of those relationships so it always ends with a positive. But the book is available on all the platforms, Amazon, Kobo, Apple, wherever you get your books. It's available in audiobook, ebook, and available in paperback. And it's all available at thecofoundershub.com.
And by the way, my favorite place to listen to audiobooks, because I basically do everything on audiobook now, is Audible.
Yes.
And I love that you're making this available on Audible, because I have found there are books I want to read sometimes and they're not on Audible. And I'm like, So thank you for making it available everywhere. That's
I'm an Audible
fantastic
fan too. So yeah.
Oh, so when we're on our walk virtually.
Exactly. Yes, for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when we were in the green room, you mentioned something and my whole being was like, okay, hold on. What are you doing with this challenge for co-founders?
Yes.
This is really fascinating and I think so valuable. Tell us about this co-founder challenge that you're putting on.
For sure. So in the beginning, when we were speaking, I told you that I thought one of the most important things that co-founders can do is to be intentional about their partnership. And I thought, what is it that I can do to assist these co-founders in keeping their partnership front of mind when their business is doing its thing? So what we created was the 90-day challenge. And this is a bi-weekly email that goes out to founders that actually gives them exercises and reflective thoughts that show up twice a week for them to either practice that week or to think about, to help them keep that relationship in a positive light. So questions like, what is something that you can do today to really uplift and support your partner in the role that they currently have? And just taking a few minutes to look at that person that sits across the room from you and say, what could I do to make their load a little bit lighter and help them be more effective and more productive? Or what is it that I can do to help them know that I support them and that I'm grateful for them? How can I thank them today, both privately and publicly in front of my team? Because this encouragement is so important. It's why we have a co-founder, is through the hard times that we can be there to encourage one another. So the 90-day challenge is something you can sign up for to get these emails that come into your inbox. They're short, they're easy, they're just there to keep things front of mind and keep you intentional about your partnership.
And that's also at the cofoundershub.com.
All the resources are at the cofoundershub.com. You can get the book there, check out the resources, all the different, and take the challenge.
Sounds like a really extraordinary place for building thriving co-founder relationships and business partnerships. So as you're listening in, if you yourself are not in a place where you are building this kind of relationship, I want you to think of at least 3 people that you know that are, and I want you to share this episode with them because you're going to be their new BFF.
That's right.
And they're going to be thankful forever because you may have saved their business and given them tools that are going to help them, because here's the thing. I know you know this, but just for our audience sake, when a business is in contention and struggle amongst the partners and amongst the team members even, that destroys profit potential because your attention is moving out of growth. It's moving out of like all of the positive, expansive stuff. And you're focused on like, how do I deal with this problem today? Absolutely. And one of the best things to do to grow quickly is to shift back into like, where are we going? How do we get there? So I feel like you're actually helping the economy grow and expand by putting these resources out in the world.
I like to think that.
Single-handedly. I know it. You are a spark for expansiveness and, more financial abundance for everybody by giving these great tools. So thank you for this work that you're putting out in the world.
Thank you.
Well, I got a couple fun questions I want to wrap up with. These are the listeners always love hearing these fun stories. What would you say is the boldest thing you ever did to amplify the success in a business? And it can be the one you're in or one of your previous ones.
Yeah. The boldest thing that I ever did, I just had a conversation with somebody whose mind was blown that I went from high school to entrepreneurship and I skipped college and university. And this is something that I'm a big advocate for. I actually started a small online school for kids to focus on entrepreneurship because I really believe that grit, belief in one's vision and the business ideas that they have is really all that you need to actually succeed. And I think that had I gone that traditional route, went to school and really just kind of plodded along in something that really wasn't something that was me, I was never academic, I think I might have lost that fire and I would have lost that excitement of embarking on new things. So I think definitely skipping that step was a smart move for me in long term.
I love that you shared that so much because I have talked so many people out of going to college. I spent thousands and thousands of dollars on college. Yeah. I have a master's degree.
Right.
And in retrospect, I think it gave me confidence, but I didn't really use anything else in the entrepreneurial journey where I ended up. And so I think there's a lot of people that don't need those steps. And I'm glad you're an advocate for that and helping people courageously choose a different path. Okay. Last fun question. Is there one thing you wish you would have done sooner because now you know how impactful it was?
Oh, this is a great question. What would be something that I wish I had done sooner because I didn't know its impact?
Well, now that you know how impactful it was, you're like, why didn't I do this sooner?
Yeah, why didn't I do this sooner? I think one of the most important things that I didn't do was invest in the relationship with my investors. So we had a lot of VCs that invested in Truly You. And upon reflection, I realized in many ways, they were actually like another set of co-founders that joined our team. And we treated them a lot like investors. And we didn't always let them in the same way that you could as a co-founder. And we didn't build that friendship with them. And then now over time, especially even after I've left the day-to-day at Trilio and I'm hanging out with my investors now, I'm like, why didn't I spend more time just fostering that friendship? Because again, your success begets their success, and they're really in it for you. So I probably would have spent a little more time building and growing that relationship with my investors.
What an insightful answer. And I'm wondering now if that's your third book.
Yeah, it's an addendum to this one. It's addendum.
Uh,
It's sort of saying, hey, yeah, these people are your new co-founders. So a lot of what applies in the book to a co-founder partnership still applies even to your investors.
that is such a great piece of wisdom there. Wow. As you're listening in, I hope you are inspired like I am. I don't have a business partnership that's on the edge right now, but I have had business partnerships, and I know so many people in business partnerships. This is profoundly insightful. I want you to really take this in, because even if you are hiring team members, there's
Mhm.
so many resources here that can be helpful for you.
True.
So the cofoundershub.com. Tanis, this has been extraordinary. Thank you so much. Did we leave anything out that you want to say before we leave?
Yeah, you know what? You can also follow us along on LinkedIn and Instagram. I do a lot of little series on there as well to help educate people in partnership and entrepreneurship. And they can do that at the Co-Founders Hub or my own personal, which is at tanisgeorge.com, or sorry, at Tanis Jorge. So TANISJORGE.
Yeah, make sure you go follow Tanis on all the great social medias, and we will link them up in the show notes for you just to make it easy to click through and find her. Tanis, thank you so much.
Thank you, Melanie. This was a blast.
Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. Be sure to join us right now in the Amplify Your Authority community at authorityamplifiers.com, and I'll share my 7 proven tips to be a highly paid expert that stands out in a crowded market. Plus, we're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.